What are the effects of the US dollar? Something we don't talk about quite a bit on our show. The US dollar, what affects the US dollar? We've talked about it throughout this whole show, right? Higher debt levels, uncertainty, geopolitics, the political climate, the US shutdown. I believe that is also having a negative effect on the US dollar and helping things such as gold and other things that are denominated in US currency. So US dollar is very important. US dollar is important for multinational businesses that do business in other parts of the world. Why is that? Well, if you're a company like Caterpillar, for example, domiciled in the United States, you do business all over the world. And whatever that business is, it's done in those local currencies. And then when you repatriate that money back to US dollars to be able to claim how much you made over the past quarter or year, you have to report that in US dollars. So if the US dollar is weak versus other currencies, that gives your earnings a nice boost. If the US dollar is too strong, well, you could see that your earnings will come down because of that strong US dollar. So a US dollar has a big effect on all of us living in Canada, living in Europe. Obviously, those trips to Buffalo that everybody takes from Toronto and from Southern Ontario, or trips to the US in general that Canadians make become a lot more expensive when the US dollar is stronger. Lately, as I said, US dollar has shown weakness versus a basket of currencies around the world. Our first chart clearly shows this. Let's put up that chart. But as I said earlier, actually, we can put up the chart first. As I said earlier, there it is, you can see the weakness in the US dollar. But as I said, the Canadian dollar has not fared too well as well. And so the US dollar actually has maintained its value versus the Canadian dollar, but versus other currencies, it has definitely lost a lot of value, especially versus the euro. Those that are buying euros lately with US dollars, they're finding it quite expensive. Let's go back to the chart that we put up just briefly, and we can show the US dollar importance. Key takeaways: the US dollar is an official currency of the United States and many other countries or many other territories. US dollar is considered the world's most stable currency and is used extensively in global transactions. We know that. US dollar, especially in emerging markets, is huge. US dollar weakness is very important for the emerging markets. The dollar was delinked from gold in 1976 after a lengthy process beginning in 1933. On 88% of the world's forex trades, US dollar plays a pivotal role alongside being a global reserve currency. Discussions regarding the US dollar diminishing international role persist, but it remains strong due to the US economic stability. So yeah, we've heard the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China talking about lately moving away from the US dollar, perhaps coming up with their own currency to be the backing of trade and many other things. But that still is not the case. The US dollar continues to be the mainstay for the world. And even though countries like China want to move away from the US dollar, they buy gold. They've been buying a lot of gold to diversify away from the US dollar. The US dollar still remains the dominant currency around the world. Our next chart here shows gold prices with respect to or versus the US dollar. You could see towards the end of that chart, you could see the US dollar falling and gold prices surging even higher. And that goes with what I said in our last segment, that gold will move higher when the US dollar shows weakness. Our next chart shows debt levels. What are the debt levels? We know that the US dollar is weak when the US debt moves higher. And oh boy, the US debt has moved extremely high over the last few years. During the Biden administration, a lot of people are fearful that even during the current administration, President Trump, that the debt levels will continue to surge, and that is not good for obviously debt and US dollar. US dollar being that reserve currency, the US economy. So higher debt levels just adds to the uncertainty, which continues to weaken the US dollar. So moving forward, it's definitely interesting to keep an eye on the US dollar, keep an eye on what's happening with respect to US government bonds. That also goes hand in hand with the dollar, the strength in the dollar, strength in the economy, GDP growth. All that plays a part with respect to the US dollar and how Canadians, when we travel to the US, how we will fare, how far our dollar, our Canadian dollar, will go versus the US dollar. So definitely something that I think many investors and just individuals in general are keeping an eye on moving forward.